Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. My Virtual Obsession, my romantic thriller, is now available on Amazon and other online retailers. This book explores the intersection of loneliness, love, and how chasing perfection through technology can lead to fantasy and reality colliding. My Virtual Obsession out now.
Hey everybody, it's Catherine Crestani with another episode of Willow Healing Matters, and today I am joined by the beautiful Gail Behrend. She is an author, speaker, and energy healer, and midway through a successful 20-year engineering career, she experienced a spontaneous spiritual opening which changed her life, transforming her from skeptic to seeker. Her spiritual journey eventually led her to explore human energy and alternative healing as a side vocation. A graduate of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, BBSH, in Florida, she has been an energy practitioner in Vancouver, Canada for over 30 years. Gail is the author of the book Energy is Real, a practical guide for managing personal energy in daily life, which she co-authored with Claudette Bouchard, a fellow energy practitioner. She loves teaching people about our subtle energy nature and empowering them to own their energy so they can truly own their lives. So a big welcome to the show, Gail.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
The first question I have is, what actually happened in your rapid spiritual awakening?
It happened when I had the triggering moment was a traumatic relationship breakup. And so I had been living with men I loved, and we'd been together 4 years. And I should also state that before all this happened, I was very much a left-brained logical engineer, very materialistic. I was an agnostic. I wouldn't be an atheist because that's having a position, and I just didn't know. So it was safe to call it, who knows, God, if he exists. So I was an agnostic, and I had, it was very much in my linear frame of mind, and planning our life together. It felt like I was on track for what I had was considered normal, and that sort of thing. And so that we were on track. We were actually shopping to buy a house together. We were talking marriage and kids and that sort of thing. In my heart, I was committed to him and our future together. I saw the house in the suburbs, the 2.5 kids, the golden retriever, and the minivan in the driveway, and all of that was
Check,
my
check, check.
goal with that. Check, check, check. Yeah, the engineer mind, tick, 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 on track, mission in progress. And I loved him very much so. It felt like he was the one. And we'd been together for 4 years, and we were living together in my place. And then suddenly and I'm not going to go into the long details about it, but what ended up happening was I discovered that he was seeing somebody else while living with me. And when I discovered that, I was heartbroken. And then he was a little bit of a narcissist and a gaslighter. So my self-esteem had been slowly I had been a lively and independent and a person and held my own in our discussions and fights and that sort of thing. But over time, I got worn down. And so when this happened, I already had my sense of self had already been eroded over 4 years, but I wasn't knowledgeable enough about the psyche at that time. I was just plain old engineer, and then, into my head, into my intellect and that sort of thing. But inside, my self-esteem had been worn down. And so when we ended up breaking up, at first it took me a couple of days to realize I had a say in the matter. That's how far down I'd gotten. I'd become a bit of a doormat, which is unlike my professional self completely. So when this happened, I finally realized this is not okay. He can't continue to live with me after this. And so I did ask him to leave, and he did. But after that, I went into this cycle of this spiral of despair and this sense of alternating between elation because I was free and I could be myself. I didn't have to squash myself just to keep the peace. But what have I done? I've lost the love of my life, and I will never have any, that kind of believing, that kind of negative translation or interpretation of it. So I went into this deep spiral of despair with self-loathing coming in. And, you ask, why did this happen to me? And then your ego's only too happy to give you reasons why you're not good enough, right? And like many women, especially in that type of a relationship, we blame ourselves. And so that's what I was doing. And so I actually went into this spiral of despair, and it felt like my whole future had fallen off, like there'd been an earthquake and my whole future had fallen off into an abyss, and I fell in after it. And so finally, I came to the point where I was so bereft and heartbroken. I felt that literally that I could never, ever have love again, that I'd blown my one chance, and that was it. And then as I looked into that potential future for myself, I felt, if I can't have love, why live? And in that place, I started contemplating ending it. And there was no point staying, no point living. And so I collapsed into that space. And in that moment of complete crashing and letting go of life, even in my will, I heard these words in my head, which said, "But I love you." And they were accompanied by a rush of golden pink energy coming down through my head, through my whole body, like a column of light, filling every cell of my being with infinite love. I'd never felt so loved in my entire life, not even by mom. It was just way bigger than that. And the weird thing about it was cosmic in scale, yet at the same time it knew me. It wasn't impersonal at all. It was talking to me. And it knew all my flaws, it knew all my faults and all this stuff, but loved me anyway. And I just went into this expanded state where I was sort of floating in the cosmos, and I saw our beautiful planet Earth, and I felt this wave of tenderness coming from this infinite being, whatever it was, not only towards me but towards all of us. And realizing, wow, this is what Jesus must have talked about when he talked about the loving father energy. It wasn't male, but it was nevertheless felt like a family member, but it wasn't like any human family member I knew. So there was this sense of connection, relationship. And my engineer mind it was blown away. I didn't know what to do with this. I didn't have any frame of reference, does not compute, because my limited view of life didn't include spirit.
Hmm.
It had always been a hypothetical thing, And so suddenly I had this direct experience. And if it had just been words, I could have talked myself out of it. But because it was accompanied with this incredible energy, it was real and tangible. And that's why my book is called Energy is Real. This was the experience that showed me there's something way bigger going on here than we know. And the great news is it's loving.
But it had to be that way for you, Gail, because if it
For me,
wasn't
it's
that
the only
way,
way.
it wouldn't have shook up, it's that shocked, same thing,
Yeah.
shocked or shook up your logical mind enough to have that, because you experienced it on so many multisensory levels. Your brain could not explain that away. It's like the ego couldn't actually come up with an explanation for it. So you couldn't default automatically back to the old way of being, because there was no backsies. There's only this way
it was
forward.
literally gobsmacked, like, what? And then, of course, when I slowly came to, I mean, I didn't go unconscious, but I came back to myself. I had to figure out what that was. That's how it's trying to reassert control, right? And it had to explain and label things, but it didn't know what to do with that. So thus began my seeking. And so I didn't instantly enlightened as a result of that, but my worldview was blown open, and I had to learn more about that. So I knew that there was something much more, but that's all I knew, and no context whatsoever. And when I mentioned it to a friend who was more open-minded than I was at that time, she said, "Oh, it sounds almost like a near-death experience." Well, and I guess I was near death, and I hadn't actually harmed myself, but I
You're
was,
thinking
from
about
a soul perspective, ready to leave, and it saved my life. So I'm deeply grateful for that experience, and I like to say this is how it feels to me symbolically, is that I was lifted out of the abyss, of despair, which I had created with my own thoughts, and placed gently on my path and shown my wings. It's like the universe lifted me out of that abyss of despair and set me gently on my path and showed me my wings. And the wings were my sacred free will, my loving heart, and my co-creative consciousness. And then I got the message, when you have wings, you need never fear an abyss.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you could just be like Tinkerbell flitting in and out of abysses and then just exploring them for fun, right?
I love this because fairies are so in my life at the moment. That's why I just was like, yep, Tinkerbell, yep, yep, yep.
So I just totally rearranged my thinking, like, an abyss is fun. And so it took me, being still pretty indoctrinated as an engineer, I had to research it. And so in those days, so that was in the 80s, in those days there was no internet. And so it was books. So I was buying books and borrowing them and that sort of thing. And I was guided to, or I think a friend loaned me a copy of Jane Roberts' book, The Stuff Material. Are you familiar with that? Oh, it's channeled. And I would never have read a channeled book before, but I decided to suspend my disbelief until after I'd read it. But it's mind blowing. It's the nature of personal reality, and it talks about the nature of consciousness and how it's multidimensional, and that we don't just have past lives, we have parallel lives. We spin off alternate universes all the time, which you could sort of think of as probabilities, depending on what options we have available to us. Our consciousness is constantly flitting back and forth from one universe to another, and it's like, whoa.
I love this. I love this because we were just talking about this before we jumped on, when I was saying, when I work with people, they'll want an absolute of what's going to happen. It's like, but it's not going to happen. There's always multiple timelines. There's always multiple universes. There's always multiple options.
Exactly.
It's what resonates for you. Yeah.
We're that fluid. And not only that, a part of us does, not part of our human self, but part of our larger self is off exploring those too, so that we're getting the full experience, right? And we're also at that high level of our larger self. The various parts of us that are off on these adventures are actually informing it. And it's developing from those experiences. And then this is what's so mind-blowing about the Stuff Material, is talking about how our different parts are actually all part of this largest. It's like, if you think of your hand, each of your fingers looks like, from its perspective, like if each fingertip from its own perspective feels separate from the other fingertips and it's having its own life. But from our perspective, well, it's just part of my hand, which is part of my body, which is, so you realize that there's still a larger me that's also experiencing all those simultaneously, right? So.
Yeah, I've even had clients, and this happened to myself too, actually. My future self was blocking me on my path. So I was working with this practitioner, and she's like, I've never had this happen. Like, this is your future self. And I was like, that's really interesting. And then at the same time, I've had 2 clients since, and one, a parallel version of her came and pushed her off to stop her stepping onto a higher path. And another one, she works a lot with darker energies and things like that. And a parallel version of her that doesn't work with light energies, prefers the dark energies, came to sabotage all the places she had in past. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, who's to say that when you hear that voice, like, don't go down that alleyway, or stop, you're going to trip over, how do you know that's not a version of your future self coming to warn you, so you don't end up with a broken foot, or you don't end up getting mugged, or you don't get up having that traumatic experience? Because this is the point. Time isn't fluid. It's constantly shifting and changing depending on the choices that we make and the events that spiral. And this is this whole, you change one thing, everything else changes. It's so true, because it has that domino effect, and it's that ripple butterfly effect as well.
And so it's suddenly your sense of who you are is way more than human. At that point, because some of your past lives are not on Earth.
Correct.
Like, not past lives, I mean,
parallel
lives. Yeah. So we are big enough, we're part of spirit, and our nature is fluid consciousness. We're not limited by our form. It's just a vehicle for us, for whatever environment we choose to explore. And we're what gives it life. It doesn't give us life. We're giving it life in that sense, with our consciousness and our desire to be here. And so anyway, that led to more reading. And so my mind, as I was reading the Seth material, so it's just a paperback. It's just a small paperback, right? And I'm a fast reader, but it took me a year to finish it because every paragraph I had to put the book down, go, whoa. My mind was being like reprogrammed, and I literally felt in my brain these little connections. It's like tumblers in a vault, opening. And then I had this strange experience as I was reading all this. It was like, I know this. I don't know how I know it, and it's totally weird to this me, but some part of me already knows this. It's like I'm being reminded rather than learning it for the first time, which was bizarre because I had never been in contact with those ideas in this life anyway. And even thinking about other lifetimes was a whole other stretch.
Yeah, I call them soul memories. Like it's just that fragment of your soul just remembers it. So even I had this incident once where I was driving my car and I went to go start changing the gears to go overtake it. And weirdly, the energy of this place was it used to be a racetrack, right? Like they built a housing estate that I was driving through. It used to be a racetrack.
Oh my gosh.
But I swapped into this soul memory and I wanted to overtake this car and I went to go change the gears. I have never driven a manual in this life. I don't, right? But I knew, and I went to go push the clutch and everything. And I'm like, what is this? And I was like, was I a race car driver in another life? And I just said, yes. And I was like, oh, how intriguing.
Yes.
And so, and it's just this, there's a really cool movie. It's a little bit like extreme, but I really like it. It's called Infinite and it's got Mark Wahlberg in it. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but
No.
these souls, certain souls are born with the memories of who they were in every incarnation. And these souls always come together because they're meant to, like they're bounded together. But he couldn't remember because they put it down to he had a psychological condition and they gave him drugs to numb it all, right? Sounds familiar. Anyway, but he could make a perfect samurai sword, like from scratch. This is right. And in this movie, everyone, and he was selling them to make money so he could get more medication and But this one day he didn't take the medication and they go, oh, thank goodness we could finally find you. It was just the medication was blocking us from connecting with you. And so this movie is really fascinating. There's a lot of crazy things that are a bit extreme, but there was a lot in it that I was like, oh, that's so true. That's so true. That's what's going on, like all these kind of different aspects. But a lot of, like most of us go through the river of forgetfulness and we have to unpack it. But then there are some of us who are coming through who didn't have to go through that, but they're there to help awaken the rest of us. That's what I feel.
Yes.
But
that's our job.
But yeah, but I have had that experience that you've had, Gail, where you read things as well. And I'm like, I already know this. Or I'll be having a conversation with somebody. I'm like, oh, we've already had this conversation. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we haven't, but we have. I'm like, this is, like I just,
you get parallel universe.
Yeah. And you get that déjà vu feeling. And I always think of the Matrix, when the cat, and they're like, oh, it's déjà vu. And I'm like, yes, there's a glitch or there's a catch up or there's something kind of happening there. So it's so interesting. And then,
It's a film called again?
Infinite.
Oh yeah, I must look it up.
It's even got the infinity symbol. Yeah. Let me know what you think because I watched it and I was like, my husband and I were watching it and now I probably wouldn't watch it. There is a little bit of violence and I cannot fathom that. But the concept at the time when I watched it, I was like, my goodness, yes, this is what happens. This is what happens. And my husband was like, what? I was like, yes, this is what happens. So it's really interesting when you start to unpack these movies that are in front of us and even things like Star Trek. And Star Trek, the deck of Star Trek for me is what it looks like when I go work with the Galactic Federation and go up there. So it's really
cool. Very cool.
But this is
and Earth is the holodeck, right?
Right. And then you've got Avatar, which is what happened with the vegans and the Lyrans and that sort of thing. So when you start to look for those parallels, you realize that a lot of the time we are gifted the soul remembrance of that and we have to birth it in some way. So whether it's, you have a new energy modality, well, it's actually not new. You've just remembered it, or it's been gifted to you or it's come through. And like you said, you just have this deep knowing of like, oh, I already know this, even though I've never looked at this, but I already know this. And your soul just has this remembrance. And it's like, yeah, I reckon it. Same as when you meet a aligned soul, right? It's like, I know you.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
met
Yeah.
you, but I know
Absolutely.
you.
Feels like we're old friends.
Exactly. So our
Or
soul
enemies.
knows a lot more. Or enemies. Or maybe you were my mom and I really didn't like you in the last life, and that's okay. So but this is the point. Our soul knows more than our human consciousness could even
Absolutely.
process.
Wow. So this was a really fun time for me, and gently and slowly my mind got educated. Also, I was introduced to metaphysical books like, Wayne Dyer I loved because he was very practical, but also very spiritual. In those days, it was more on the managing your managing your mind and your stuff, your emotions and all that. But that I followed him all the way as he evolved. And the other one was Louise Hay, and she introduced the notion to me that our thoughts can actually affect our health and our bodies, and which I didn't know. I didn't know any of this stuff. I was completely clueless about all this stuff from my engineering stage, but I learned quickly because it was fascinating. And eventually I came to it's after about 7 or 8 years of intellectual searching, after reading the Louise Hay books, that sort of thing, I had this sort of intuitive feeling that something it wasn't wrong yet, but it was forming. And then it dawned on me, I've never healed my broken heart. And if I don't deal with that, I could become ill, and I can feel something. It wasn't enough to create symptoms or anything like that yet, but I could feel that if I didn't address it, that I would become ill. And so I decided, okay, time to switch from intellectual seeking to healing. And so and and it was an emotional wound. It was a betrayal and a devastation, broken heart. I had no clue. How do you heal that? So, the do-it-yourselfer, right? The engineer, fix-it personality. How do you fix that? And I happened to be working in Germany at the time, and I had found a New Age bookstore in Hamburg, which actually had quite a good selection of English titles. And so I was looking at the bookshelf, and they brought in a new shipment of books, and the clerk put a book right in front of my nose, and the title was The Healing of Emotions. I thought, I think this one's for me.
Just in case we couldn't make this sign any clearer, we'll call it exactly the question that you're asking.
They need to for me, right? Like they knew they had to make it really obvious for me. So thank you. So, and it happened to be written by Chris Griscom. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she was very popular in Europe. She's an American healer, and her specialty is past life healing. And she was made famous, at least in Europe, by Shirley MacLaine's book. So you may recall, I don't know if you've read any books by Shirley MacLaine, but back in the 80s, they were all the rage, and at least with some people. And in one of her books, I can't remember which, Dancing in the Light or Out on a Limb, she talks about her past life experiences. And she went to see this healer in New Mexico, who turns out to be Chris Griscom. So that's why that book was in Germany, because the Germans loved her. Some of the other I'm not sure if it was the French or not, but anyway, she was very popular there. And so I read her book, and I thought at the end of it, I really was convinced, ooh, I need to do this, because it was talking about how some of our deepest wounding actually originated in another lifetime. And it's just a pattern we're working on as a soul. So, like strong soul themes are like betrayal and stuff like that, where that just you get these patterns of betrayal and revenge, that sort of thing. And so if I was dealing with that in this life, it meant there was part of my soul's work in this life was to heal that wound. And so I thought, okay. And she also said that the wounding that we get in relationship, as adults, often was actually started in infancy or in childhood. Basically, our first betrayal was in childhood, and we tend to repeat the same patterns that we experience with our parents and that sort of thing. We don't recognize it usually, but we tend to choose partners who activate the same wound. And so that meant that maybe I had some karmic stuff with my parents and et cetera. So I thought, yeah, let's do this. This sounds like fun. And so I called them, and they said, where are you calling from? And I said, Germany. They said, oh, well, we have a branch of the Light Institute in France. we have facilitators going there to offer sessions. Would you like to book sessions there? So I said, yes. Well, long story short, I ended up going there for 2 sets of sessions, and the sessions were a set of session was 4 days, 3 hours each,
Wow.
going deep, deep, deep into past life work.
That's
And
intense. That's intense.
yeah, that's very intense. And
Yeah.
then I did a second set of 4. So I went away for a week and then came back. So I did a little holiday in the south of France and then came back and did the second set. And so very powerful, very transformative work. And while I was there, I got to know I was staying in a French country and it was a 12th century auberge, with like 2-foot thick stone walls and that sort of thing. And this couple had bought it as a ruin and they had renovated it and turned it into a lovely inn in the French countryside. And so I got to know them and chatted with them and that sort of thing. And when I went back to Germany, this was in 92, February of 93, husband called me and told me that he and his wife were breaking up. How would I like to come and help her run the hotel? I mean, I had no experience in the hospitality industry and all that, but, I had just turned 40 that year. And it was like, what do I want the rest of my life to look like? And suddenly there's this out of the blue, incredible offer. And I said yes.
Mhm.
So I let go of my engineering career, my 20-year engineering career to go help run a French country inn. While I was there, I also took over his role as the coordinator for the Light Institute. Again, I had no experience at this, but I did. I said yes. What the heck? And so it's like spirit was really setting things up for me. And while I was helping clients get to their sessions and helping the facilitators, get a place to work out of and all this, I had a lot as a result of my association as a coordinator at the Light Institute. I got family rate on sessions.
Wow.
So I paid like a quarter of what clients paid. And so I went nuts and I did tons and tons and tons of more sessions. As soon as there was a facilitator that didn't have any clients, booked, I'd say, I'll do it. And so I really took advantage of that to go very, very deep and explore not just past life, but then you start going into the aspects of your consciousness and things like the inner masculine, inner feminine, etc., sort of archetypal aspects of your being. And I happened to receive sessions from the director of the French Light Institute. And as she was working with me, she said, I think you'd be a facilitator. Would you be interested in training as a past life facilitator? And again, I said, yes. So that's the very first step I took into actual healership. And I trained with her. And while I was and loved it. I mean, it was so fascinating to be helping clients explore basically multi-dimensions, not just past lives, but also some of them but whatever their higher self deemed important
Mm.
for them because the point of the healing was it would help them with their life, this life.
Mm.
But some of the things they needed to know were elsewhere in their larger consciousness. And so we always worked with their higher selves to find what was most up for them to help them now. And so it was fascinating because I started to learn directly from working with these clients about the soul's journey and how it can use multiple lifetimes to work on a specific theme. So for example, it might be learning compassion. And so it's going to have a bunch of suffering lifetimes, you can imagine, in order to be able to help somebody with compassion, you have to understand what they're going through. And so it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem fair that somebody would have so many bad lifetimes, that sort of thing. But from the perspective of the larger soul, it was all part of its learning to become a healer. The compassion aspect couldn't just be learned in one life. You needed to be able to see all types of situations. And so each human adventure was part of its training, but it was experiential learning. It wasn't textbook learning. It was like actually having to go into the trenches and experience what it means like to be abused or to be the abuser, because you have to be able to have compassion for both. And another soul theme would be, larger soul theme would be learning the wise use of power. right? And so when we start, we're not very good as beginners. We're like 2-year-olds, right? You take what you want, you hit the other kids. Oh, that's mine. No, it's mine. And then throw tantrums. Well, that's what a lot of adults are like these. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the larger soul journey is ultimately this soul is on the journey of becoming a wise leader. But the journey involves not being wise at the beginning, right? You're going through the very worst stages as a learner. You're going to make mistakes, and the good news is that you're not your body. And so it's wonderful to have, this was so helpful for me to have that larger perspective of how we evolve, and how each lifetime you can look at it from that perspective. What am I here to learn? And how can I, even whatever pain and trauma I've had early on, how does this serve my purpose going forward? How has this strengthened me or given me new perspectives? And so many healers have had abusive childhoods. It's like they were developing that compassion. They didn't know it at the time. They were merely hurting and suffering and that sort of thing. But when they rise above it and through it, when they do their healing work as clients, they're able to access a depth that somebody who's never had that experience can reach it, so they can hold clients more safely, knowing where they are and what they're going through, and be able to respond to them in a way that's truly helpful. So of course they need training, but at the same time, they've already got that innate understanding.
They do need a lot of, and often we attract the people that have been through similar things to us, whether it's in this lifetime or you've experienced it lifetime before, because otherwise you can't have that. It's beyond empathy. It's that compassion level, right? Because it's like, I know,
Yeah.
because you do. And when people share it with you, you're like, I know.
Yeah.
It's not, I understand, or it's like, no, I know.
Yeah.
And
And
this
you also know the way out. That's the other
exactly,
piece, right? Because you've made it through
exactly,
yourself. Yeah.
exactly.
And
And
that's what makes you safe for them. That's what makes them trust you. They can feel it.
yeah. And also that level of forgiveness just keeps coming up today, like being able to forgive and reclaim your power, because so often we've been conditioned that you forgive and forget, but it's not about forgetting. It's about claiming back your power and also learning from them. Because if you haven't learned anything from those multiple lifetimes or the multiple soul journeys or the multiple people that keep coming to your life to do the same thing again and again and again, then you're going to just keep having the same soul lesson repeat again and again. So it's not about forgetting. It's about,
Yes.
thank you, this is what I've learned. And for me, I normally get things in
Exactly.
threes. So it's like the first one is when you're swimming around, you have no idea what's going on. You don't even know if you're kicking your legs. The next one, you're able to tread water, but you're like, wow, this is still, I can't keep doing this. And then by the third one, you're like, oh yeah, I can just float, whatever, and
Yeah.
then it's shifted. Right. So
And
that's,
the other thing
yeah,
is, once you know that you can help yourself through it, you don't care about blaming anyone else. It's like
no,
irrelevant, right? So
exactly.
you could say it's forgetting in the sense it's just irrelevant. It's like it was a triggering incident. That's all. And if you know how to work with it, it becomes a strength. So you're learning
Your
and
blessing.
developing a strength, and an understanding is a huge piece of it. And as I mentioned, in the journey of learning to wise use of power, if you think about all the people on earth, the big names on earth right now who are misbehaving,
That's a good way to put it.
they're still in the 2-year-old stage. Okay, can I forgive a 2-year-old for throwing a tantrum? Well, he's just 2. So from the larger perspective, yeah, you can forgive it. I mean, you feel compassion for the pain, but every single person's on a journey like that, right? So we're all actually far more powerful than we realize, and that nobody's actually. It seems like everyone's victims, and that you're helpless and all that. But from a soul perspective, no, we're all these vast beings having this human experience for our own purposes. So,
And
wow,
it's truly a lesson in staying neutral. Like this year at the start, I was working with this other energy worker and she said, the message coming through is you need to stay neutral. Like she didn't know exactly what was coming. And the more that's coming up, I just keep telling people, just stay neutral. Don't give into the fear. Don't get pulled into the narrative. And the more people are doing that, the more that these misbehaving toddlers don't know what to do because we're not giving in like we did in like the past 5 years or whatever it might be. It's like, oh, hang on, they're questioning and they're not giving into that narrative anymore. So what do we do now? So this is where,
Yeah, and you can guarantee they're going to amplify because like the toddler shifts to tantrum and okay, be ready for it, but still stay neutral.
And exactly. And there'll be a meltdown in there somewhere. But in the end, I got this really powerful message, I think 1.5 years ago, which is don't run into the fire. Let the fire come to you until it's at your doorstep. Don't worry about it. It's
yeah,
like,
exactly.
And even, like there's all this talk at the moment, we're getting a little bit political, but, like for us in Australia, our petrol prices keep going up and people actually talking about it. But at the same time, it's not stopping them getting petrol because we're all just like, well, you just sacrifice something else in your life, right? So you might just not get some cups of coffee that week because you still want to travel. You still want to do all these things. And the funny thing is in the political climate, they just announced that they're giving us relief by cutting the taxes on it. And then my friend and I were laughing. We're like, see, this is the whole thing. They try something and it doesn't work. You stay neutral in it. And the more you keep your energy out of it, the less momentum it can have because it's only when there's belief in that. And that's even with energy work. There's only when there's belief that you get the momentum and you can have that shift and that change.
Yes, that's perfectly said.
Yeah.
Perfectly said. That we have to own that we're part of it, right? And the only thing we can control is our own energy, right? We can't control anyone else's behavior. So don't let yourself be upset by it.
Yeah. Which I feel this is a beautiful segue into the book that you wrote, which is Energy is Real. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we start to finish up?
Sure. Yeah. So I wrote it with a friend who is also an energy practitioner. She's passed on, but together we were teaching our clients, in addition to healing work, we were teaching them little tricks to use. When something would happen, they complained about something happening with a family member or whatever, we would teach them some ways to find balance within their own field so that they could be safe in those situations and that sort of thing. So we would teach them all these energy skills for them to practice between sessions. It was like their homework. And they would come back the next week for another session. They say, oh, I forgot what you told me. Can you write it down? And Claudette said, yeah, my clients are saying the same thing. And then we looked at each other and said, let's write a book. And so that's where our book came from. And I wrote it for the person I was before my experience. So it's written in non-woo-woo terms. It's for the person in the lineup at the bank. And although they probably won't buy it, but our clients appreciated it. But it's written in a very practical way, introducing them to the idea of energy as something real and as a part of them and something that they actually can control. And that they control their emotions, they control their thoughts, all of these things that they can choose to transform instantly once they choose to, once they know they can do it. And it teaches them how to tune into those aspects of their being. So I'm assuming they know nothing, that they're as clueless as I was at the beginning. So it's a beginner's book. It's not for some sophisticated channel or medium or healer who already knows all this stuff. This is more for their clients, right? And it's giving them things that they can do on their own when they need it in a situation where they're thrown off by somebody and that sort of thing. And it teaches them how to ground and how to charge their field and how to clear their field in their home from negative energies and all these basic energy skills that we should have all learned as children, but
spiritual
it's
hygiene.
not part of our culture.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, somebody's got to write it down. So we did. And it's written in a very informal and sort of conversational way. And it's the way we would with our clients, so that they asked for it to be written down. We've written it step by step with illustrations. How do you do this? And so it's like a reference book or a handbook that you can use when you need to solve a situation. You can look it up and it actually gives you like here's what to do if you're feeling envy. What does envy actually mean? What's the message of envy? And it's basic level. It's, you want this too. Well, okay, that's fair message. It doesn't mean you get upset because somebody else has something you want. It means it's your job to bring what you want, your version of it, into your life. And it's not about stealing it from someone else. It's about creating your own version of that. So now you don't worry about feeling envious because, oh, that's all I needed. That was a correction coming in from my own energy being, it means I need to bring something like this into my life too. And then now you can work towards that, right? So it's meant to be empowering, and so that you don't feel overwhelmed by emotions, but rather, what are they trying to tell me? And and the same thing with physical sensations, experiences, mental situations, and spiritual situations. So it's got a little appendix, not little, 4 appendices at the back of the book, talking, giving you what those messages, how to interpret them, and how to what energy skills to use to come back into balance.
Yeah. And even if you are a practitioner, that's still helpful to have because, like we talked
Yeah, it's a
about,
little reminder, like, oh yeah, because we'll all get triggered by things, and
and
even
when
if it's
you,
just from the news.
yeah. And if you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to see out of it as well because you're in the storm. You can't see the sun on the other side. So
Yes,
sometimes it's nice to have a little map or someone to support you to help you step out of it or hold your hand so that you at least know that you'll be okay and that it will pass, which it will. It's just when you're
yes.
in the thick of it, it feels like crap.
Exactly, and, thank you. That's I hadn't thought of it that way, and I really appreciate your saying that. And I think, yeah, and it's meant to give hope and empowerment to people, so that if they are in something, they can look it up and say, what do I do? Well, you can look it up. Oh, okay, I can try this. And so there's no need for them to call me or anything like that. They can try it first, and then they can, if we do have a session coming up, they can talk about how it went. So yeah, I love it, and it's stuff that I wish I'd had when I was all confused about life and not knowing what to It's not that life doesn't confuse me now sometimes, but I was really clueless then. So so this has given me a bit of an advantage in my life, and I'm so much happier now, so much loving life and peaceful, even regardless of what's going on in the world. It's like that's like a TV show that's going on that I don't have to watch.
Yeah,
And I also,
exactly.
work hard to stay aligned with spirit and my path and purpose and how I can be most useful. And at the very least, if I hear some really difficult or painful news, I know where to send my prayers and to hold the light for those affected by it. So that's my role, is to hold a vision for the healing of that. And so it's like a doctor coming to the waiting room and it's full, and if he just says, "Oh, look at all these sick people," it's like, like with disgust, it's like, well, isn't that your job? So
Exactly.
as a light worker, I can't allow myself to get all upset about these things. It's because that's why I'm here, and let's just get on with it.
100%. And I like to ask the guests that come on the show, Gail, if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
I would say the thing that most comes up is there seems to be a lot of victimhood going on, and I want people to know that when you're blaming others, you make yourself a victim. And that you're actually waiting for them to change. You can wait forever because they may or they may not change. They have free will. So why make yourself a victim when you could just choose to change how your own experience? You can choose for yourself. And so by owning your energy, you can actually change your experience, you change your relationships, and you change your whole perception of the world. Now you're empowered. You don't worry or wait for anyone else to change. They may or may not, but you can certainly change yourself. That's the one thing that you do have power over. And so, yeah, I would like
100%.
to see people owning their energy. And that also means taking responsibility for it and in their own life, but also in their interactions with others, because you're going to get back what you give out, right?
100%. Thank you. 100%. And if people want to come and find your book, Gail, or they want to come and work with you, where's the best place they can find you?
The best place is my website, energyisreal.com, all one word. And yeah, they can get a free sample of the first chapter of the book. They can get the first, which is all about teaching you how to expand your energy awareness. So it's got 6 exercises in there for opening their energy awareness. And there's also some free resources on the site, recordings of those very 6 exercises. And plus my own contact information is there too if they're interested in having some help energetically. I'm happy to see clients. And also, for those who are like my energy engineer mind, interested in learning about the science behind energy, I have a whole bunch of links to websites and papers explaining a bit more.
Beautiful. I love that you put that bridge there between the science mind and the woo-woo mind.
Yeah.
But it's also a beautiful time to be a light worker because there's more and more evidence coming out supporting what we do. Especially, I love the Heart Math Institute and places like that because it truly reflects everything that we know, and I quote it all the time, the studies that come out, because sometimes people need to see that it's not just made up in our heads, but at the same time, some of the things that I have seen come through, I'm like, there is no way I could make this up. Cool. So I'll make sure to put all those details in the show notes so
Thank you.
people can connect with you, Gail. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, subscribe, or share, and reach out and connect with us. We love connecting with people who want to have conversations. I'm sure Gail is the same, but please do. And thank you, Gail, for sharing your really amazing journey and profound experience and how you could capture like energy being real and create that in such a beautiful offering where people can understand that through your book. So thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It was a joy to be on your show.
Are you looking for an afternoon boost to support you until the children go to bed or to get through that evening meeting? Why not reach for a cup of ceremonial cacao? It will boost your energy, reduce your inflammation, and also allow you to go to sleep at a decent hour. For more information on how to grab your ceremonial cacao, check out the link in the show notes for 10% off. Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.